Welcome to Taoists. The purpose of this recording is for educational and entertainment purposes only. None of this is financial advice.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Luncheon DAO live from the Taoists at Taoist.xyz. And today, joining me here in the Restream virtual studio for a conversation is Paul from Hive, who is joining us live from Los Angeles. Paul, thanks so much for taking the time to come on, talk a little bit about Hive and also about gardens. Thanks for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Cool. You got it. And so we're here live on Twitter. And also we've got the folks in the Taoist Discord. If you got any questions, go ahead and post those in the voice chat, and we'll try to get to those a little bit later. But today we're going to talk about Hive, which is one of the more, I suppose, pure DAOs that I've come across, like in terms of being truly decentralized. I was asking you before, like, what title to call you by, and I think we settled on contributor, because basically everyone in Hive is a contributor, right? There's not really even a core team, the way I understand it.
Right. Yeah, that's a good description. Truly decentralized. To the point where, yeah, I think there would be pushback if people started asking for titles at Hive, because then you have a definition for someone's role. And yeah, I think Hive does try to truly get rid of anything that consolidates influence and power in the DAO to specific people.
And so how does that work? Like, kind of walk me through, a little bit of what the process is within Hive.
So our community treasury of honey is controlled. The distribution of our honey is given through conviction voting. So anyone in the community can make a proposal, and if enough of the community supports the proposal, then the funding is sent out from the community treasury. And so because it is easy enough for anyone to request money, there's safeguards in the form of our on-chain social contract, the covenant. That's kind of the constitution and the participation agreement for the DAO. And that's enforceable through Celeste, which is a decentralized arbitration, where if there's any funding proposal that doesn't meet the participation agreement, then it can be disputed, and then a randomly selected jury of Celeste stakers looks at the proposal and they decide whether or not there was a violation. And so those are the checks and balances that make it so truly anyone can make a proposal and get funding. So it's bottom-up governance, but you're still protecting the community from abuse from people that would ask for money that shouldn't be getting money.
So it's really sounds like kind of the model of like a truly direct democracy functioning on chain. Is that kind of how it works? Yeah,
that's the idea. And what winds up happening is that there are people who are in Hive for a long enough time gain reputation and trust just naturally, because people see them around and they see the work that they do. And working groups get formed around certain projects, and projects will fund themselves through conviction voting. And once a project requests money from the treasury, at that point it becomes more of a typical centralized DAO, where usually that money is going into a multi-sig, and there's a centralized group of people within a project that are deciding how they're paying each other and working on the group like a more typical central working group, I guess.
And how long has Hive been around?
It was first funded from an Aragon Nest grant in 2019. And Hive as it is today, with proposals actually distributing honey, started in 2020. So about a year. There's been 70 proposals that have passed.
And it looks like a handful of products have already shipped and are out there, right?
Well, a year ago, there wasn't really anything. So OneHive is built on XDAI. And 1 year ago, there wasn't any infrastructure on XDAI. So OneHive had to build a DEX, it had to build out, Agave is a lending protocol that was funded by OneHive. But each element of the governance, the Celeste and this conviction voting, all this had to be built out. And so that's kind of been most of the work that's been done at OneHive over the past year, is physically building the ecosystem so that it can work. But now with Gardens and with OneHive is also launched on Polygon now and is going to launch on a layer 2 at some point. But it's expanding, I think, beyond just the XDAI community.
Gotcha. Okay, and you mentioned Gardens, so that's kind of one of OneHive's products that are you're putting some energy behind right now, I gather. Tell me about that.
Gardens is OneHive's governance structure that anyone can build their own DAO with. So there's an interface where you set up your DAO. You can either create a DAO that mints a new token, so you have a brand new governance token for your community, or you can bring an existing token and have that become your governance token for your DAO. And yeah, it's just a simple interface for creating a DAO in the style of OneHive for whatever use you have.
And so this is kind of is it kind of along the lines of some other tooling solutions we've seen, like DAO House and that sort of thing?
Yeah. I think if you've ever used Aragon Govern, the onboarding process feels very similar to Aragon Govern.
Okay. And so what was sort of the genesis for wanting to put Gardens out there? And I don't know, maybe we have to back up and explain more about the journey of OneHive. But given that there's some of these other solutions out there, like from Aragon and DAO House and other Colony, other places, why did the folks in OneHive feel there was a need to put your own out there?
Yeah, from what I've seen, I don't think there is as decentralized a governance structure as OneHive's. And I think we at OneHive are very passionate about some of the things that you can achieve with a truly decentralized bottom-up governance like this. And we really wanted to make that something that was available. So I personally started contributing to OneHive about 8 months ago. That's when I became a full-time DAO contributor. And what attracted me to Gardens at OneHive was that. Like coming into OneHive, the part of OneHive that sold me was this viewing the proposal page and seeing the button to create a proposal and seeing, okay, this is a way that you can actually distribute a shared treasury to people. And I, if I wanted to, could create a proposal for a good idea that I had and fund it. So I thought the idea of applying that to other types of organizations and to other DAOs was something that we should really be doing. And I think, I guess I can go deeper into what I think is important about decentralized governance versus more central DAO structures, which I think is kind of what we're seeing for most DAOs today.
Yeah, I mean, I am kind of curious, because when poking around the OneHive Discord and discourse and just the notion and seeing some of the things that have been accomplished. I mean, it's pretty impressive, the products that have been created without a real core team. I mean, what are some of the secrets, do you think, or the advantages of actually producing in that truly decentralized environment?
Right. I'll start with the cons of it, because there's a lot of problems with a truly decentralized organization. There's no hierarchy. If you're coming into that environment, it's hard to see who you need to ask for information and what is available for you to do. And it just makes everything about coordinating the kind of physical work that's being done. It adds a layer of challenge to every aspect of that. But if you want bottom-up governance, which is something that there's pretty specific use cases for it. Either you need security if you have a project where you're concerned about a government deciding that it doesn't like what you're doing. Because I think if you have a DAO that has essential team that is visible, if a government wanted to do something to regulate them, then they're not going to have any issue making that DAO kind of adhere to whatever rules that they're going to decide for them. So maybe you want security. Another element of this is compared to a centralized organization, you create a barrier to entry to people that want to contribute. And it can be as simple as just having a salary. If you have an organization that has salaried people, then the benefit of that is that you have people who are being assigned a role, and those are people that you can reliably count on to do something if you ask them to do something, because they're a paid full-time contributor at your project. But the con of that is that if you're not on salary, then you're severely limited in what you can do for that organization, because you have this, you're not a labeled participant of that community. And if you have ideas and if you want to do work, then you're going to have to go either get a title, or you're going to have to convince someone with that title to do your idea. So the other use cases for that are if you have a group of people that are really passionate about what your organization is doing, and this could be even a company with a product that people are really excited about, you can give those people a portion of your budget and give them control over it. And you'll find that people that have that intrinsic interest in creating value for that organization, if you give them the power meaning capital, to do what they want, then they're probably going to impress you with what they can do. And the last but most important use case is public goods. Public goods are the area of our economic system that capitalism doesn't serve, because you can't buy or sell public goods. A public good is anything that when it exists, you can't control who gets to benefit from the value of it. So education, parks, scientific discovery, lots of the most valuable areas of our world, capitalism doesn't work for them. And with a truly decentralized organization building public goods, then you're able to first of all attach a store of value to the value being incentivized, a public good. But then also, because the value of public goods is subjective to the people who get the benefit from that, you want those people to control how the value is created. So like, for instance, a park, the people who get value out of the park are the people that are walking their dog through the park and spending time there, and they know best how that park should be. And so if you give them the power to create value for that park, they're going to do a much better job than a centralized group like a government, which is one level removed from that. So that's the most important.
So yeah, I like that you bring up this concept of public goods, which is one that I find to be kind of squishy, in the Web3 world, and I think outside of Web3, we think of public goods, as basically things that are paid for by tax dollars. I mean, in the U.S., I think a lot of the things you listed would be paid for by tax dollars. But in Web3 and on the blockchain, it's a lot more confusing to me, what we consider public goods. So what are the public goods that you see One Hive building? Is Gardens an example of one?
Yeah, Gardens is free for anyone to use. And we don't want Gardens to take revenue, because once it takes revenue, then it's a private good. And the revenue itself becomes kind of the goal of that organization. So like in capitalism, we do a very good job with funding private goods. And the reason it works so well is because we have this very clear, visible success metric of revenue and profit. And it's very clear when a group is not doing good at that. But the caveat is that you're kind of a slave to revenue as the purpose of your organization. So by making your product available for everyone to use, and having it be a public good, and then having the purpose of that product be to create value for the people that use it, you put that above anything like revenue, which, so I think it's this concept is hard to kind of wrap your head around, because a lot of people only see value from revenue. And even in crypto, you see people asking projects if they're not getting revenue streams, then what's their long-term value? And I think it's important to like decouple that idea in your head that we have store of value tokens in crypto now that are capable of holding value that doesn't necessarily need to come from revenue. So in some cases, revenue is a dirty concept, especially in crypto.
I guess so. I guess my question about Gardens in particular would be, so removing revenue from the equation. Then my question becomes, what motivates people to continue to maintain it and to iterate on it? Is it similar to like the Wikipedia model, where people are doing it for basically like the intrinsic motivation that you were talking about earlier, or am I missing something?
No, it's funded through the community treasury. So the people who are working on Gardens are paid. They're paid in honey, and they'll always be paid in honey. So there's capital for them to use.
So then I guess the question becomes, what motivates the community to continue to allocate that capital for it? Is that then it's almost the same as the model of like a foundation or a nonprofit with a mission to maintain these public goods? Is that a comparable analogy?
Yeah, there is with Gardens, we have to get creative with how to create buy demand for honey without revenue. Celeste is a major way that we do that. So you, in order to secure the Celeste network, you stake your honey in Celeste, and there's rewards. You'll earn a 25% APR on your staked Celeste. And then as a participant in that, you're someone that can be called on as a jury member if there's a dispute in one of the Gardens communities. So that's a way that people are incentivized to buy and hold honey.
Interesting. So Celeste is a separate token?
No, it's honey. It uses honey.
Oh, it is honey. Okay.
Yeah, and honey also funds Gardens. Honey is the token that everything in One Hive is built around.
Right. I think that I've been most familiar with Honey Swap up until kind of preparing for this conversation. Was that one of the first products to come out of One Hive?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I wonder if, and how long have you personally been involved with One Hive?
I started contributing in April, and
Okay.
then pretty quickly became a full-time contributor. So
Okay.
yeah, probably 7 months I've been a full-time One Hive contributor.
And over the course of that time, I mean, have there been any projects that basically didn't go? I'm wondering if there's been like any fails within, this truly decentralized community that you were able to draw any lessons from, or has everything pretty much progressed as expected?
No, yeah, there are proposals that don't pass. One of them that comes to mind was this proposal. Someone new to the community made a proposal, and it was a substantial amount of honey. I think it was, or for us at least, I think the request was for something like $50,000 of honey, and it was a very well written out proposal that was it was a media plan where the honey being used was in a lot of ways going to incentivize people to create content for One Hive. There's contests and I think it was almost like NCAA bracket style where you're having people competing to make the best content for One Hive. And it was a very well thought out proposal. The contributor clearly spent a lot of time on it, but he was new to the community, so he didn't have a lot of people that could say that we're pretty confident that he'll be able to deliver on this. And it was also a lot of honey. So the pushback was mostly, we think this is a good idea. We'd like to see more people working on the project that have been around longer, since we feel like we could trust them more. And we would also like a smaller amount of honey so that it's not such a big risk for the community. And he wound up not editing the proposal. So the proposal just dropped and didn't happen. But I thought that was kind of an interesting way that the community, I think, correctly saw, even though this is a good idea that could be good, that we have these problems with it, and if they're not addressed, then we're not going to pass this.
Yeah, I mean, overall, that sounds more like a success than a fail, actually, because it was, a proper due diligence by the community is what it sounds like.
Right. Okay. So a real fail of a, yeah, I think Honey Swap is on XDAI, and there was the launch of Honey Swap on Polygon. And the main attraction for why people would provide liquidity for Polygon was incentives, liquidity mining rewards. And Honey Swap launched on Polygon. There was a quick, big influx of liquidity. And then like pretty much ever since then, it's just decayed. And there's, at this point, there's not enough liquidity on Honey Swap on Polygon for it to be useful. Yeah, so that was a launch that just didn't really pan out for One Hive.
Didn't pan out. One more question on Gardens, going back to that. So that launched earlier this year, and how has the uptake been on that so far?
So the initial Gardens communities that are already live have been working with the Gardens team since well before launch. And those are up and running. The biggest one is Bright ID. So they launched Bright DAO, which is a garden. And so they're live on Gardens. There's Agave, the lending protocol, is a garden that was building since pre-launch. And two other ones that aren't live yet, but have been building for a long time are Token Engineering Commons and Giveth, which are public goods focused crypto projects. So these are the projects that have kind of helped in some ways with the direction of Gardens. By working with them, the Gardens team kind of saw what some of their needs were. Like Bright ID they wanted their token to be on mainnet, and they wanted to be able to wrap the token in their garden. So that helped the Gardens team create some of this functionality for wrapping existing tokens into a garden. Go
ahead.
Those are most of the gardens that we have now, and now that we've launched, we're expecting to see the communities start launching with this Create a DAO tool.
And it's open for any community to hop on and launch a garden right now?
Yep, on XDAI, Polygon, and Rinkeby for testing.
All right, excellent. So I got one of our Daoist community members, Igor, here that is joining us in our virtual studio that I wanted to bring into the conversation. Igor, you got a couple of questions there from Arizona, huh?
Yeah, I do, and thanks for being on the podcast. I had a couple of questions related to the. I guess you got a couple of different names for these gardens. There's Veneto, which allows you to take a native token or maybe mint a native token, and Boboli, which seems to allow you to import an existing ERC20 token. Between these two, I mean, what do most communities come to One Hive with? Do they normally say, well, we're starting from scratch, we want to mint a new token and, help us? Or are they generally saying, oh, we started on someplace else like Mirror, let's say, and now we want to expand our capabilities and incorporate One Hive? So what's kind of the landscape look like?
So we get interest both from projects with existing tokens and projects that have existing tokens. Pretty much every time are they want to wrap their existing token. They don't want to create a new token for their garden, and those are bigger projects. And then most of the interest that I've personally seen for the native token gardens are projects that don't have a token yet, which generally means that they're smaller. I think that's
what does wrapping mean, just so that we're clear on what that is. So they've minted an ERC20 token, and now they have, let's say, a community of, I don't know, let's say 30 individuals who have these ERC20 tokens in their wallets. What does wrapping them mean to you?
the way that conviction voting works is that the amount of support that a proposal needs to pass is a function of how much money there is in the community treasury, the common pool, that's what we call it. How much money the funding proposal is asking for. So the more money that you ask for, the more support that you need for the proposal to pass. And then also how many of those tokens are currently being staked on proposals. So if there's 10 proposals, then and there's 1,000 tokens that are staked on those. Staking meaning that you're voting for that proposal. The portion of votes needed for one proposal to the total number of tokens for all proposals becomes the threshold for when a proposal passes. So the number of tokens in the common pool and within people's wallets is how hard it is to pass proposals. So if you have an existing ERC20 token, you don't want to necessarily count all of those tokens towards those governance parameters. You want to dedicate a portion of those tokens to be used in this common pool and to become, I guess, its own governance system in itself.
So you're leveraging these staked tokens as your voting power, sort of.
Right. You have your token, you're going to wrap a portion of it to be your governance garden token, and then only those wrapped governance garden tokens are counted for conviction voting.
Okay. And have you found that conviction voting is kind of the best of all worlds in terms of governance, or are there, if at earlier stages, maybe some better mechanisms, or maybe if you have breakout groups that smaller groups can come to consensus without with different voting mechanisms?
Yeah, I think for a small group that's not planning on growing, it probably makes more sense to have a more typical DAO, and that small group of people votes yes or no on proposals. The benefits of conviction voting are that you have the ability to prioritize funding between a lot of different working projects. So if there's 10 different proposals happening at the same time, it's built to be able to naturally pass the most important proposals first, and then the worst proposals will not get passed. So it helps with prioritizing a lot of different work streams. And then I think the biggest advantage is compared to the typical yes no vote that a lot of that most DAOs operate on. When you have a yes no vote, you create a divisive moment for your DAO where there's someone just come forward with this proposal, and this is an idea that we might do. Do you support this or do you not support this? And then the forum posts for that proposal wind up usually getting polarized, where you have one segment of the community that's decided that they like this idea and another segment of the community that's decided they don't like this idea, and you're pitting your own community against each other, and it's counterproductive to a group of people that should all be working towards the same goal. With conviction voting, you can't you can't downvote a proposal. You either support a proposal or you don't support a proposal. And not supporting a proposal doesn't mean that you don't like that proposal. It might mean that there's another proposal you think is better or more important right now. And what winds up happening in one Hive that I've seen is that the conversation in the community is a lot more productive around these proposals, because it's the people who aren't supporting it aren't saying, I hate this idea. Maybe they like the idea, but they don't like the team, like the example I was talking about before. Maybe you don't like the team. Maybe you think that this is just not good timing. Maybe you think that certain negative consequences to the proposal haven't been thought through. And that's what the forum discussion looks a little bit more like, is that we need to address these issues before I would support this. And I think generally it's a more constructive culture for a DAO.
Okay, but in terms of the architecture of One Hive, is that the singular mechanism for voting, or are there more, or do you intend to incorporate more down the line?
That's the method for funding proposals. For decision votes, which is when someone makes a proposal that's for changing a governance parameter, since that's kind of it's a more critical DAO moment than a funding proposal, because you're going to change something that's key to how the DAO functions. And that's a decision vote that works like a more typical DAO vote. It's yes or no, and you need over 50% approval for that to pass.
Got it. So how technical does one need to be, or does a group need to be, in order to set up on One Hive, establish their DAO, mint tokens, put out proposals? Is that a fairly, do they need a coder? Is that something that people can do without technical expertise?
Yep, no coding needed. The governance parameters are important to the DAO, and something that people should understand before they're building a DAO. By default, all of the governance parameters are set to be what One Hives are now. So you can just kind of emulate the One Hive governance setup if you want. And then also there's the Token Engineering Commons does what they call parameters parties, which are weekly meetings where they get together and they basically just map out what DAOs will look like if you set these governance parameters to be differently. They've done a really good job with that. They have charts, and you'll say, okay, if we want to raise our conviction threshold from 1% to 2%, what does that mean for how hard it is to pass a funding proposal? And you can map out each of the different scenarios. So yeah, not technical, but it's just something that it's good to be knowledgeable about.
Yeah. Well, I guess for the technical folks, is it also something that they can dive in and, read the smart contracts and kind of see how minting occurs and kind of understand all of the different parameters that are incorporated into the smart contract?
Yeah. So you mean if you are technical and you wanted to look at?
Correct. Right.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And if you're technical enough, so another part of a garden's setup is something called EVM CRISPR. And if you want to change something more fundamentally about how the DAO works, you can write your own solidity and insert it into a certain part of the code for the DAO, and you can physically change the DNA of your DAO that way. And if that works with a decision vote. So for the community to approve that, then there's a decision vote, and then the DAO will add that new code. So yeah, like your example where if you need to use conviction voting, if for some reason you didn't want to use conviction voting, you could theoretically change that.
So is there like a checklist of things that communities that are thinking about gardens? I mean, is there a checklist of things that need to be in place before you set up on gardens, or can you come to it pretty new as a community?
What ways are you thinking what types of issues are you imagining?
Just in terms of having, like some, I think you mentioned having like some sort of a constitution in place. I don't know if that's the verbiage that
right.
we use on One Hive, but having some sort of basic governance structures in place, or can One Hive provide a lot of that for a community?
The covenant, you need to write that, and that's very important for your community. And One Hive's not going to have a good idea of what the best covenant is for you, because you know what your community is about, what you're doing, and what you want to prohibit from your members. So yeah, the covenant is something that the community needs to do on their own. The parameters, so like I said, that it's by default it goes to the One Hive governance parameters, but probably the best way to test that is to set up on RinkB with the people who will be starting the DAO and start writing some proposals and passing them. And that's probably the best way to get a sense of if your parameters are working the way that you want them to.
Gotcha.
So once you deploy on One Hive, how portable are the tokens that you're minting? For example, let's say you use the One Hive protocol to mint your initial 100,000 tokens, and now maybe you want to move to Ethereum mainnet, or maybe you want to do something else with these tokens. How portable is all of what you're building within One Hive?
Yeah, when you create your garden on the XDAI network, you create your initial liquidity on HoneySwap with your new gardens token and the Honey token for One Hive. And then assuming you grow your liquidity there, then you have a token that you can bridge through OmniBridge or XPollinate. I'm assuming you'd have to build out cross-chain liquidity for it. And on the Polygon network, you're creating your initial liquidity on SushiSwap. So yeah, you have a token that's liquid on that network right away. And then if you want to bridge it, you'll need to use a tool for bridging your token.
Okay. And if you didn't want to bridge, but you just wanted to mint more, is that just built into, the initial contract that you can create unlimited supply or cap the supply if you want, or all those things built into kind of your your token minting
Right.
formula?
Token supply, if you're wrapping a token, then your supply is controlled completely by you and how much you decide to wrap. If you're minting a New Gardens token, we use dynamic issuance, which the dynamic issuance targets a reserve rate, which is the portion of total tokens that lives in your common pool, the community treasury. And so if at One Hive, we have a 30% reserve ratio. So there's something like 30,000 total honey tokens in existence right now. And so the community, the common pool targets 10,000 honey tokens to be in that treasury. So if it falls below 30%, tokens are minted into the common pool. And if it goes above 30%, if you're putting tokens in there, then it'll burn tokens. But those minting and burning functions are throttled so that there's not big supply swings. And then also you set as one of your parameters a maximum supply inflation per year. So ours is set at 10%.
Okay. So do you also assist in the tokenomics, determining how many tokens to mint and how much to put in the liquidity pool or in the treasury? Are these are things that I think often people don't really know where to start. Is that something that you kind of have guidance on?
Yeah, the best way to learn more about that is to go in our Gardens channel on Discord and ask the team your questions, and you'll get a response. We don't have resources built out yet for a lot of that, but there's a lot of knowledge on the team, and there's a lot of people that, like me, I'm happy to schedule time with anyone who's got questions and talk them through their specific setup and what they're trying to think through.
Well, we're just about at the end of our time here. I wonder if there's anything important about Gardens or One Hive that you think we've left out that you want to be sure to hit.
I think no, yeah, I can't think of anything off the top of my head.
So people can check out the website, the Discord. Where's the best place to find more information?
Yeah, the Git book is a good place to start. That talks through a lot of what we have been talking about in the wiki. Discord's a good place to come and ask questions and try to get your garden launch questions asked. And then gardens.onehive.org is where you can go to start creating your own garden. There's a drop down to select the network, XDAI, Polygon, or Rinkeby.
Excellent. Well, it's been pretty fascinating to hear how this works, and I definitely look forward to digging into it more, and also just seeing what comes out of One Hive next. It's a cool Discord to poke around in for sure.
Yeah, it's unbelievably interesting.
Right.
A lot of fun to work on.
Great. Hey, well, Paul, thanks so much for taking the time, and Igor, thanks for hopping on, and thanks to all the folks out in Dallas land watching as well. So until next time, enjoy your lunch in Dow, and we'll see you next week.
Yeah, thank you. See you guys later.
Take care.